Alrighty, I'm just gonna go ahead and kick things off. So today we're going to be hearing from two different departments. The first one is going to be the Greenbelt Commission, and Remy Long is the staff liaison for that, and he does all the things Greenbelt. So we'll be talking about that. That has to do with land preservation and all of that. He'll be going over that, and then around 7:30, 7:45, we're going to switch over to Melissa Bondi with CTN. So during Remy's presentation right now, everybody same drill. Let's keep asking questions in the chat box. As soon as he's done with his presentation, he'll look at those questions and he'll answer them, and then he'll be gone for the at 7:30. Remy will be gone, and we'll go on to CTN. So like I said, just any question that you have, put it in the Q&A, and let's get started. Remy.
Thanks, Sarah. I believe I have, I need sharing permissions for my screen. I think, maybe I don't. Here we go. Can everyone hear me, and can everyone see the screen? Yes, great. All right. So great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to come and present to all of you. This is about the city's open space and parkland preservation program. I have been at the helm here for the last 3 years, overseeing both the regional open space efforts that take place around the city of Ann Arbor, and then also spearhead the parkland acquisitions the city pursues within the city limits. So let's start with some context. Here we are in Michigan, the Great Lakes state, a population of nearly 10 million and the second most diverse agricultural economy in the United States, second only to California. And then here we are, Michigan, the heart of the Great Lakes, which represent 21% of the Earth's fresh water. Now let's zoom in to Southeast Michigan, where we can see the expansive metropolitan Detroit region, which contains nearly 50% of Michigan's population on just 6% of its land base. And then within that, or surrounding that rather, is what some call the Emerald Arc of state and local conservation lands that buffer Metro Detroit and serve as the agricultural and recreational base for supporting this densely populated region. So here's Ann Arbor, as we all know, our home, 30 square miles of a relatively quiet college town with a population of just over 120,000. And in the early 2000s, the Ann Arbor community began to have a discussion of what they could do to protect the farmland surrounding the city that characterizes Michigan's agricultural heritage and also supports the local food economy that Ann Arbor is often so supportive of. What we could do to protect upstream green infrastructure that plays a role in water filtration for our downstream source water that we draw from the Huron River. And then also, how could we create recreational opportunities and protect biodiversity in the surrounding Ann Arbor area? And so what that manifested as in the end, that conversation culminated in a 2003 ballot initiative that received 67% of voter support for a 30-year 0.5 mil tax levy to purchase parkland within the city and preserve land surrounding the city. So that breaks down like this. As I said, a 0.5 mil 30-year tax levy that generates about 1.8 million per year, and 1/3 of that millage revenue is dedicated toward acquiring new parkland within the city limits. So about 600,000 a year is generated for that purpose. And then 2/3 of it is dedicated toward Greenbelt land preservation efforts outside of the city, but what's within what's known as the Greenbelt District. And that's about 1.2 million generated annually. So the Greenbelt funds can purchase both private property development rights and purchase property to establish new public recreation areas within that Greenbelt district. Now, what is purchase of development rights? What am I saying there? Well, this is a legal tool. The purchase of development rights is the action, and the legal tool by which we accomplish that is called a conservation easement, which is a legal agreement, binding and perpetual agreement between an entity like the city of Ann Arbor and a private landowner who agrees to keep their property in its current condition in perpetuity. So whether that be open space, woodlands, wetlands, or active agricultural land, the landowner has signed an agreement that will maintain that land in that condition forever. So going deeper into that, into the mechanics, owning a piece of property is often referred to as owning a bundle of rights, or a bundle of sticks, let's say. And each stick represents a right that you have to that property. So the right to enjoy, the right to subdivide, the right to sell, etc. And so by purchasing the development rights or removing the development rights from that bundle of sticks, we are selectively removing those rights that could threaten the condition of the property in the future. So we're going to remove that ability to develop, remove that ability to subdivide the property, etc., until we've only got the rights that allow for the enjoyment and active agricultural use of a property maintained in private ownership by that individual. So, for example, transactionally, how this might work is, imagine this dark black outline is a 100-acre farm parcel outside of the city in the Greenbelt District. And the city has received an application from this landowner. They want to conserve their property in perpetuity in partnership with the Greenbelt. So what we will do is we'll secure an appraisal for the property, and it may say that the property is worth $1 million on the open market, so $10,000 an acre. But we are going to not purchase the property for $1 million, because that would be outright ownership. What the city is doing is developing a conservation easement and then signing that in agreement with the landowner. And in exchange, because the development rights have been removed, we get an appraisal for what those development rights are worth. And let's say in this case, it's worth $700,000 total for the entire farm. And so the residual land value is what the owner will retain moving forward as they own this property. So this is cost effective in that we didn't have to pay the full $1 million to see this private land protected in perpetuity. It's maintained and stewarded in private ownership. And then the landowner, instead of selling the property in a single transaction for $1 million to the next generation or a developer or whoever it may be, they were able to first get compensated for some portion of their property's value, that $700,000 in one transaction, and then they hold and maintain the residual value for their life or whenever they are ready to sell. And so instead of selling in one transaction, they recoup or realize the full market value of their property in 2 transactions, which also lets us permanently preserve the resource. The dotted lines here, the red dotted line is what we would do for a typical conservation easement project led by the Greenbelt. If there's a home and barns or other ag structures along the road, we will often draw the boundary for the protected area around those to exclude them. So in the end, we may have, say, a 95-acre conservation easement permanently protected area on the 100-acre site. So by only targeting development rights, or largely targeting development rights, the total fair market value of all the properties protected by the Greenbelt, which is 6,724 acres to date, has a fair market value of nearly $78 million. However, because we're only targeting development rights and we're leveraging a lot of external funding to complete these projects, the city taxpayers have only had to invest just shy of $26 million to see that 6,724 acres of property preserved in perpetuity. So this is a map of the Greenbelt District. It's the light green sort of square surrounding the city of Ann Arbor and touching several different neighboring townships around us. And so this is a map of the Greenbelt District in the year 2000. And this is the Greenbelt District today, with all of those additional lands permanently added to the map. So what does that mean? That's 78 acquisitions over the last 19 years, totaling 6,700 plus acres, 89% of which was accomplished through conservation easements and purchase of development rights on private property, permanently adding those woodlands, those wetlands, that active agricultural prime soil, all of that added to the map through private conservation easement transactions. And then as well, the Greenbelt can fund the establishment of public recreation areas if they're owned by partner agencies like a local land trust or Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation. So 11% of the land that was added to the map over the last 19 years was actually dedicated as public nature preserves. So this portfolio of work includes 63 working farms just outside of the city limits, permanently protected, 6 farms of which sourced to local markets, 7 new farmers, this younger generation eagerly seeking to purchase land near the markets they aim to serve, were able to secure more affordable farmland because the development rights had been removed from the valuation equation. And so we've also, as I mentioned, leveraged a lot of external funding to make this work happen. Over the years, our $26 million investment was matched by $32 million in partner state, local, and federal funds. So we are doing an excellent job leveraging the city's taxpayer dollars to create the largest possible conservation outcomes on the landscape. As well, we have protected that portfolio of 6,700 acres of land includes over combined 28 miles of river, stream, and waterway frontage, nearly 80% of which is located in the Huron River watershed, which contributes to the source water protection of the city's drinking water. Now, not all of the 85,000 acres that are in the Greenbelt District are farmland. Lots of it is woodlands, some of it is development, but of the available tillable ground in the Greenbelt District, which is about 25,000 acres, we've protected almost 18% of the available farmland and guaranteed its availability for future generations to use as we shift toward a lot more local food economy structure, or a heavily emphasized one. The Greenbelt has also helped, as I said, 11 new public nature preserves totaling over 700 acres with over 6 miles of hiking trails just surrounding the city. This also breaks down to over 1,500 acres of woodlands and 1,700 acres of wetlands permanently protected around the city. So what does this look like? What's a case example of this on the ground? Well, this was a project led by actually a partner agency. We are so fortunate in Washtenaw County to be among so many land conservation agencies that are doing this great land preservation work. Ann Arbor Township has a land preservation program, Webster Township, Scioto Township, and then there are 2 nonprofit land conservancies operating in this region, Southeast Michigan Land Conservancy and Legacy Land Conservancy. And so this project was led by Ann Arbor Township, where they permanently conserved a 63-acre farm just north of town. And in doing so, they restricted the development rights and lowered the purchase price. And then the next generation of farmers, Nate and Jill Latta, who own Green Things Farm Collective, purchased the property at that lower value and now are a keystone of the farmers market here and our local food scene. And then this is an example of a public acquisition. In this case, this is a 25-acre wooded property in Salem Township called the Shatter Nature Preserve. And this was purchased. Half of the funds came from the city's Greenbelt program, and half of the funds came from Washtenaw County Parks and Rec Commission to purchase the property on behalf of Legacy Land Conservancy, which is one of the nonprofit land conservancies that serve Washtenaw County. And they have several public preserves across the county. And this is one that we were able to help them add to the map in their portfolio of public sites. So that's a lot. Before I get into some of the more complex, nuanced things of what's happening currently with the Greenbelt, I'm wondering if I could take a couple questions right here in the middle. Let me pull up questions. None. Nothing on conservation easements. How do the townships feel about Greenbelt acquisition? In general, I find that there's a lot of support. There's always properties that are hot button issues. There's a proposed development, and some folks do want us to step in and preserve the property. Others do not want us because it does affect their tax base. But overall, we're seeing a lot of support for the work we're doing. Superior Township has been an excellent partner despite not having a dedicated millage. But as I said, Ann Arbor Township, Webster Township, Scioto Township, all of those townships have dedicated millages for this purpose. And we work with them a lot in partnership with their township government leaders. As well, and Superior and Pittsfield Township do not have dedicated millages, but they're also very eager to see a lot of our work added to their communities. So overall, very well. Great question, Liz. So do conservation easements place any restrictions on agricultural practices to protect the Huron, et cetera, from runoff? Each conservation easement that we have requires what's known as a natural resource Conservation Service conservation plan. So the NRCS, or Natural Resource Conservation Service, is a subset of the USDA. And so NRCS will send a technician out to a farm property that's been preserved and work with them to develop what is known as a conservation plan, which is best practices in the farming industry at the time, to make sure that we are protecting all of the natural resources and features that exist in the property in alignment with what the farm's goals are in terms of whatever rotations they're seeking, cover crops, et cetera. So we do not mandate, say, organic practices or any fallow times or buffer strips. The administration and oversight of those deeply custom or fine-tuned restrictions would be far beyond what we're capable of, but we are able to restrict it at a level where we make that landowner engage with experts in agriculture to make sure that the resources are being stewarded effectively. And let's see, I'm seeh how are the lands affected by sales? Inheritance. So if a landowner conserves their property, it may mean that they are not subject to the assessment that they may be currently assessed at. If they are being assessed not at agricultural value, but at highest and best use, their tax assessment may be quite high. But if the assessor is made aware of a property being permanently restricted by a conservation easement, then they know that the only purpose of that property moving forward could be for agricultural purposes. So they would likely lower their tax or their assessed value down to its existing condition rather than highest and best use. In terms of inheritance, we do not play a role in the transfer of the land. We simply protect that property with the existing landowner as is, but that conservation easement is attached essentially to the deed to the property. So every subsequent landowner will always need to adhere to that conservation easement in perpetuity. So if Farmer Jane protects her 100-acre farm, whether it be her daughter or her niece or and the highest bidder who wants a farmland property, every subsequent owner will be need to adhere to this agreement. And to make sure that we're doing that, given that restrictions are only as strong as they are enforced, the Greenbelt staff visit all of these lands every year to monitor them and make sure that the agreement is being upheld by the landowner. So we walk the property and monitor it and make sure that there's no violations that have occurred. I hope that answered that for the most part. And then, is there a minimum size plot that will be considered? That's a great question. I do get calls often. So I'll say the average farm size or the average property size that we protect is in the range of 60 acres to 120 acres. So somewhere around there. We have worked on projects as small as, I think, about 15 acres. And we're currently working on the largest project the Greenbelt's ever undertaken at 375 acres. So it really runs a broad spectrum in terms of size. I don't think protecting the conservation values in conjunction with existing structures, if it be a home or barns, becomes difficult lower than the 10-acre threshold. But we don't have a program minimum or a policy around that. But in practice, we generally are seeking parcels 25 acres and above, because it is all the same paperwork to protect 25 acres as it is to protect 250 acres. It's different purchase price for those development rights, but the actual legal agreement and all of that due diligence is all effectively the same project by project. So we try to get properties that are contiguous with one another to build large blocks of protected land. So if a smaller 25-acre parcel were to come up in an area that has already 300, 400, 500 acres protected around it, that would be a higher priority than protecting the 25-acre island that is not surrounded by other conservation lands. What about foreclosure? Excellent question. This would survive foreclosure. It's a chain of title issue. So if there is a mortgage on the property, the conservation easement will be first in the chain of title. So let's say there's $1 million farm and there's a $500,000 mortgage on that farm. If there's a conservation easement and it's executed and recorded in the chain of title below the mortgage, then if the bank were to foreclose on the farm, the easement would be liable for extinguishment. However, in all the transactions we do not execute these agreements unless we've secured a mortgage subordination from the bank. So the bank needs to sign that and agree that this property, this conservation easement has precedent in the chain of title. And even if we do seek foreclosure, the conservation easement will remain. Okay, that seems like a good breaking point. Okay, I think we're in good time. I'm going to move on to some of the more complex things or more interesting things that are happening in the here and now with the Greenbelt, and then maybe do a little more Q&A after that. So right now, the program's focused, I'd say, on three large things. One, the prioritization of what remains. So as you saw, that map went from a largely empty space of preserved and conserved lands in our region to a highly dense one. So we're trying to think of the best ways to prioritize what existing parcels remain and how to spend our funds wisely for the last 10 years of the millage until it expires in 2033. We're also trying to develop new metrics to assess the work that we do. A lot of conservation groups across the United States tend to rely on the same metrics all the time. How much money have you spent and how many acres did you preserve? And so there's opportunities for us to move beyond those metrics and find better ones that communicate to the public what this investment represents in terms of a return to them, whether it be ecosystem services or recreation opportunities, and also help city council in their deliberation around these opportunities and projects for their approvals as to what the investment represents. And then finally, We're just now exploring a new model for our acquisition work that would generate more affordable farmland solutions and opportunities for new and beginning, socially disadvantaged, historically underserved, this next generation of farmers. We have 2/3 of the farmland in the United States that needs to change hands in the next 10 years. And we've got a farming population that's by and large over the age of 65 and continues to age. It's such a small group that is willing to take the baton and be farmers for the next generation. But this crisis, and when land is most vulnerable to being converted to an alternative land use scenario, whether it be housing, commercial, et cetera, is when that land is changing hands. So we're trying to develop innovative tools to address that problem. So in terms of prioritization, this again is the Greenbelt District around the year 2000. And back then, without a lot of permanently conserved land available, the Greenbelt Advisory Commission drew what they called Farmland Complexes, which equated to priority polygons or areas where we would target our work to have the greatest opportunity to create those large blocks of viable ag communities in the surrounding areas. However, now we're here nearly 20 years later, and we've added a lot of protected property to the map. So we felt it was time for us to move beyond these farmland complexes and actually dig down into the the parcel level and develop a parcel level specific analysis that highlights those properties that remain that are of a moderate to large size, have high quality wetlands or soils, either touch Huron River tributaries. And we pulled a lot of different data sets to make this analysis happen. So it is not that if the parcel is not highlighted in this prioritization that we will not consider preserving it, but this at least gives us a roadmap for what success could look like over the next 10 years if we're being strategic and also start to do some more targeted outreach to some of those select parcels. So going into the metrics, in 2020, I instigated a partnership with University of Michigan School for Environment and Sustainability to develop a new GIS tool that would allow us to measure the carbon storage potential of all of the Greenbelt protected properties and other partner agency properties that are within the Greenbelt. So a team of master's students and I worked for nearly 2 years to help put this model together. And in the end, we found that the Greenbelt's 6,700 acres of protected land equates in terms of an EPA social cost of carbon dollar value to about $15 million worth of carbon permanently sequestered on these preserved lands. And by keeping them preserved and needing to maintain them in their current condition, we're guaranteeing that that $15 million worth of carbon stays in that green infrastructure and is not cut and released back into the atmosphere. So this tool more specifically was used for a single acquisition project that recently came up to City Council. So this is a 220 acre property in Northfield Township and largely wooded, as you can see. And Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation is considering purchasing this property to establish a new public nature preserve with trails, parking lot, et cetera. So this will be a recreation resource for the entire community, and it's just 5 minutes north of town. So we used our carbon storage analysis tool, and it showed us that the above ground carbon value, which is not the soil carbon beneath the ground, but the above ground carbon, which is that which could be destroyed if the land was converted to another use, was over $1 million worth of carbon. And given that the property was, the purchase price for this property is nearly 1.5 million, and the county is contributing about 500,000, and City Council authorized about $1 million toward this transaction, we were able in that transaction going to City Council, be able to provide them with context that our Greenbelt investment will result in a nearly one-to-one return from a permanent carbon storage lens with this project. So that project was approved by council and approved by Washtenaw County Parks and Rec and is an active acquisition, and we're working through the due diligence now, and we will likely close in 2022 on this acquisition. Okay, lastly, I'm going to run through something that I'm extremely excited about, which is the topic of affordable farmland access and innovating our transaction models to help the new generation of farmers afford farmland. So, as we all know, land is essential to starting a farm business, and it provides the water and the open space necessary to grow. It also determines our market opportunities. If I live 4 hours away from my market center, that's a lot different than I live, within 5 miles of the city center. So it's also not just a place for your business, but also where you likely make your home. And then finding and securing land, affordable farmland, is the biggest challenge that beginning farmers face in the United States in starting a viable career in agriculture. Pair that with farmland prices being at record highs across the country, especially those that are right outside of our nation's cities, where the demand for local food is often the greatest. We have a real problem on our hands. But thankfully, there are conservation organizations or agencies across the country doing good work to help address this issue. Private land trusts or land conservancies and government land conservation programs like the Greenbelt. We've been protecting farmland for decades. The total number of privately protected land in the United States is well over 50 million, the size of Nebraska. And it's this invisible map that so few people see, given that when you open up Google Maps, you see our state, our local public nature areas and recreation lands. But this private land conservation really does happen in an invisible way on this landscape, because there are very few maps published to show where all of this land is. But beyond protecting the acreage, a few visionary programs are working to ensure that their program directly helps facilitate the transfer of that protected land to the next owner and prioritizing those affordable opportunities. So in all, Washtenaw County conservation agencies have been underutilizing this model. And so I think it's time that the Greenbelt pursue this. So again, to distill that, 2/3 of our farmland changing hands in the next 25 years, 8% of farmers under 35, 34% over 65, 2% owned by minority farmers, 13% are only female owner-operated farms, and 45% of the farmland in the United States is owned by landlords, not the farmers themselves. So this is a huge problem. And so we are leaning on national partners like the National Young Farmers Coalition and leaning on their leadership and their vision that we must eliminate these inequities in land ownership, protect farmland for producers themselves, facilitate that secure land tenure, and support the farm viability through that transition. So while that problem statement is nationwide and big, zooming down here into the Southeast Michigan region, we wanted to ground truth that demand or that need from this next generation of farmers for affordable farmland. So our partners at MSU Extension conducted a survey of a pipeline of over 180 noon beginning, socially disadvantaged, historically underserved, local food, regenerative ag farmers in the Southeast Michigan region that we knew were land seekers. And so our respondents confirmed that, yes, they are actively seeking farmland for the most part. You can see that some were able to find what they were looking for, but for the most part, they're remaining in the seeking category. This survey result to me really speaks to the desire to actually own, and I'll distinguish here that land and farm, land is actual just bare ground vacant farmland for production, while a farm is both the agricultural ground plus a home and infrastructure to live on. So and then you can see these questions go from leasing and long-term leasing options to ownership or lease to own ownership. And by and large, People are interested in owning property. It gives them that security year to year and through their lives and through their businesses' adaptation and growth to make sure that they own the asset itself and wouldn't suddenly have it pulled from beneath their feet and have to go and find a new place to farm. They're investing in building soil, in building community. So ownership is really largely the goal among these land seekers. And then how many of them are looking for properties that have been conserved with a conservation easement because it lowers that development rights value, or it lowers the purchase price value? But by and large, folks are either, yes, I'm interested in that, or no, I'm not familiar with that, but I am interested in learning more about it. And then what's the biggest challenge? Knowing what farmland's available. A lot of it's often sold to family or neighbors, et cetera. Finding something that fits in their budget. That's a $300,000 100-acre farm is a lot different than $1 million 100-acre farm. Desired specifications in terms of location, et cetera. Access to that capital for the down payment, same with financing. So let's zoom out to all of Washtenaw County here. And let's look at all the work that's been done, not just the 6,700 acres of land protected by the Greenbelt, but all of the conservation agencies that play around in this area. And we've done over 138 farmland conservation easements protecting nearly 10,000 acres of farmland. But the overlap between getting these new producers connected to that affordable conserved land is really left to three mechanisms. One is market chance. They find a conserved property that happens to be listed. They happen to make the competitive offer and they secure that property. That is relatively rare. Two is a land link platform. These are platforms that exist across the United States in different regions to help this very issue of land seekers connecting with retiring farmers or those that have land to sell. We do not have a viable land link platform in the state of Michigan. There is a lot of activity right now to try and help get one established, but there is not an effective tool or land link platform at this moment. So the third option is what we call a buy, protect, sell transaction. And that's where a conservation agency actually helps in that facilitation and the transfer of land. So this aligns with the Greenbelt's 2019 strategic plan emphasis on providing this next generation of farmers with access to affordable land and supports or enhances or grows the local food economy surrounding the city of Ann Arbor. So what is a buy, protect, sell transaction? That is where the agency, like the Greenbelt, the city of Ann Arbor, actually purchases a farm outright and owns it, and then works to develop the conservation easement and issues a public RFP for the sale of that property to a selected buyer. That will happen in a simultaneous transaction where the conservation easement is executed and this property is sold to that next farmer at that lower price. So this is often done when there are priority parcels that come up for sale that someone needs to step in to make sure that it gets added to the map of conserved lands. Maybe it's adjacent to an existing conservation easement that was a great priority to add to the map, and now we have the opportunity to expand and buffer it. So what this could look like is, say, a 50-acre parcel in a priority area that we get notice is up for sale, and then suddenly we have the opportunity to split that parcel into two smaller 25-acre parcels to create two affordable farmland opportunities for a farmer that would have a business plan that emphasizes local food production and regenerative farming. And then we would have that public RFP and that public criteria to weigh those and assess those proposals and then sell to that selected buyer. And then we've got more protected land on the map, which is our primary objective, but we're also fulfilling these secondary and tertiary goals of helping this next generation of farmers and boosting the local food economy. So again, what that could look like in practice, this has not been done yet. This is a model that we've proposed to City Council as an opportunity, but we have not actually taken a project through this yet. But this is just a visual representation of what I just said. Taking a 50-acre priority farm, subdividing it into two 25-acre farms to increase the number of available farms, but also creating a protected landscape in the process. Okay, that was a lot. Looks like there's time for questions. Is any of the Greenbelt at risk from PFAS? I believe PFAS is fairly ubiquitous in our environment these days, very unfortunately. So I'm assuming, like many places with tributaries and whatnot downstream from former industrial sites, there may be some contamination. It may be I know the state's threshold is extremely low for what they would qualify as contamination with PFAS. But other than that general awareness, I don't know of any particular risk beyond that. Have you prioritized any properties within the city for natural features preservation? That's a great question. So yeah, today's conversation was obviously focused on the Greenbelt District outside of the city and not the Parkland acquisition efforts that happen within the city limits. But we do accept applications for new parkland. There are very few large wooded parcels that remain in the city. And also our existing park system needs some improvements in terms of easement and trail connectivity between the existing parks that we have. So the PROS plan, the Parks and Recreation Open Space master plan for the park system, is currently underway or kicking off soon. So that's an opportunity for the community to provide that public feedback on what parks we may be missing or less aware of that are potential for being added to the map. But we don't have a prioritization like the one I showed in terms of the Greenbelt District parcel level prioritization that was done. Can you elaborate on the social cost models? Was that part of your work, or was it an existing model? Yes, that's I will not be able. There's a reason we worked with a U of M team of master students to do this, which is that their qualifications for speaking on that exactly are far exceed my own. But what I can tell you is the model gave us the metric tons of CO2 sequestered in the existing trees or vegetation on the Greenbelt sites. When you have the metric tons of CO2 calculated, you can plug that into the EPA's standard for converting metric tons of carbon to a dollar value. So we relied on the EPA social cost of carbon model, and that's Googleable for more info. We rely on that metric. There are a lot of valuations for what carbon should be valued at. Some have it as low as, I don't know, $15 a metric ton. Others have it up at $350 a metric ton. The EPA, I'd say reasonably conservatively, I think calculates it at it's either $42 or $55 a metric ton. So with that, I think that we're on the lower end of that potential for reporting our impact, but I'd rather take that conservative approach and use their model and something that's nationally standardized in that regard. Hope that answers your question, Sean. Under the buy, protect, sell system, how can you ensure customer won't up and sell out shortly after purchase to developer? Would that be enforcement tools? If I'm understanding that, James, I think maybe you clarify. So if we secure a property, if we purchase it and then we sell it to that next farmer, the selected buyer who has a competitive proposal, but then they choose to sell the farm right away, the conservation easement would remain in place. So the property is still perpetually protected, which is our primary objective and what we accomplish in all of our projects. But the city could also consider securing a right of first refusal, which would allow us, if the property is listed for sale, to be the ones that get to match any bona fide offer first, so that we have the chance to then purchase the property again and then issue another RFP and then secure another right of first refusal and so on. So there is potential for us to keep us have a legal interest in a property even beyond that first out sale to a new farmer, if that makes sense. Is there an opportunity to monetize captured carbon? Excellent question, Matthew. There likely is. There's obviously a lot of groups working on that question across the US and trying to capitalize on that. So far, we haven't found a good program to partner with to do so. So we've been relying simply on reporting what has been protected and what that relates to in terms of our actual millage investments in the preservation projects we're doing. But we're not seeing any revenue come in associated with the carbon that we are storing on these properties or that we've seen permanently stored. So there have been a lot of floating conversations countywide and among the other partner agencies in our locale about how to pool those resources, because a lot of carbon monetization happens on such a large scale, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 commercial forest enterprises monetizing that carbon value. And we in Washtenaw County over the last 20 years have added about 20,000 acres to the map. So if all the agencies were somehow able to come together and figure out a way to monetize that, that could provide us some additional revenue to continue on our work beyond the millage expiration of each of our respective programs. Definitely interested in models, definitely interested in Greenbelt opportunities that do not come back with high carbon storage values. The carbon storage tool is fairly limited in that agricultural land or actively tilled and farmed land is so difficult to measure in terms of carbon because it's constantly cycling, that our carbon tool only measures the standing vegetation and existing vegetation and woodlands that are on the properties themselves. It does value below ground carbon as well, but really the part that's threatened is that standing live mature vegetation. So of all of our 6,700 acres of property, 1,500 or so being woodlands, that's the portion that's being valued from a carbon perspective. So we will still prioritize the preservation of agricultural lands, not just woodlands, but the carbon storage tool gives us that better opportunity to at least see in some select projects, especially those with lots of woodlands, that we could have a really close return on investment from that carbon storage lens. Well, thank you very much, James. That's very kind of you. And then thanks for the presentation. Learn a lot. What do you think the most important aspect of the Greenbelt program is, and what do you like best about your job? Wow, that's really cool. Oh boy, I'm stunned by this community's conservation ethic. A city decided to invest its tax dollars on land preservation efforts outside of its city limits. You all should know and be so proud of this program in that it is so rare in the United States. There are maybe 2 or 3 other cities that have decided to do something like this. This is innovation. This is a testament to this city's conservation ethic. And so I think its sheer existence might be the most important part of the Greenbelt, that we contribute to partner acquisitions. We spearhead our own. We leverage more federal funding than so many agencies are able to do so in the United States. We secured the 3rd largest federal award for land conservation just last year, $7.4 million brought to Washtenaw County by the city to do this great work. I'm just floored by this city's dedication to conservation inside the city limits and outside of it. And the best part of my job is just, I feel extremely humbled at the opportunity to take a part in that effort. It's a real privilege. Okay, are we done?
Remy, you are done. Thank you so much. That was really awesome. You almost got me crying at the end there.
Me too.
But we really, really do appreciate you coming and, being with us. So thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye, Remy. One moment, y'all. I am getting Melissa promoted. Alrighty, Melissa.
Hi,
This is
Sarah.
Melissa Bondi. She's gonna be talking to y'all about CTN today. Same thing, if you guys have any questions, just put them in the Q&A box and Melissa will get to them whenever she's ready.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I am going to share my screen in a second, but I guess I'll do a quick introduction. Does that work? Okay, well, welcome. Normally, I would be doing this in our studio at CTN. However, as you know, we are all virtual, so this works too. I'm going to do my best to try and give you a little bit of a high-level overview, a little bit of CTN. So that way you can understand a little bit about our department, as CTN is part of the communications department for the city of Ann Arbor. So my name is Melissa and I am the assistant manager there. And I've been there, I've just hit my tenure at CTN. So I have a background in communications. I went to Specs Howard for radio and television, and also finished at Rochester College, and I finished my degree in mass communications with a concentration in public relations. So it's been interesting. I've been in government television now about 20 years, believe it or not. I can't believe when I say that sometimes. So yeah, I've been in what we call it is PEG television. So that stands for Public Education and Government Television. And you might hear me say that a couple of times, but we'll say PEG TV. If I refer to that, that's what it means, Public Education and Government, which is what the city of Ann Arbor has. So let me share my screen. Okay. So CTN, we go by CTN Ann Arbor, is Community Television Network, but we changed the name a few years back to just go by CTN. It was easier for social media, for promoting, marketing. So we go by CTN Ann Arbor. And we were established, our center in 1973. So we are one of the oldest PEG stations in the country, believe it or not. And one of the bigger stations in this state of Michigan, we've got 4 channels, and you'll find that many PEG centers have 1 or 2, but we have 4. So what we do primarily are our core services. We've got our 4 channels, like I had mentioned, so we program them and operate them. We provide coverage of city meetings, and we also offer free television production workshops, which is kind of mind-blowing, I think, for some people when they realize that they're free production workshops. We do a lot of promotion and a lot of work with NPOs, nonprofit organizations, and we've had countless. I can't even. We're in the hundreds of NPOs that we've worked with all over, not just in Ann Arbor, Washtenaw, but all over the state and all over the country. We've worked with different nonprofits, and we, as far as interviewing them, and as far as putting their programs, PSAs, promotional videos on our channels as well. We also have a video on demand. I will talk about that in a little bit, and in a very extensive archive library, spanning almost 50 years of footage and shows and programs. And we also we're really big with the League of Women Voters and the local election coverage. So we have a lot of election programming, and the years that we have got elections, and then we've got a very large public media production facility. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So our channels on Comcast Xfinity, we've got channel 16, which is our meeting coverage, and where most of our CTN series, locally produced series, play on. We've got channel 17, which is the public's channel, channel 18, which is the educational channel. So a lot of the programming that comes from there comes from schools, educational institutions all over the country, even all over Michigan as well. So anything that cooking shows, anything educational wise that someone may want to put on 18, we generally steer them toward that channel. And it could go also, channel 17 public access programming could also go on the educational, but for the most part, we try to keep that where it's just mostly from the educational institutions. And then channel 19 is our community bulletin board. So that's our channel, and it goes 24/7 of community messaging. So everything, any event that's happening in Ann Arbor or Washtenaw or surrounding communities, we can put up on our bulletin board free of charge. And as well, we put up, city information, closings, anytime there's any type of emergency. So that will go on our community bulletin board. And that is also free of charge and free promotion. And we also have Channel 99, which is on AT&T. And that is the same programming that is on Channel 16. So those folks who have AT&T will see our meeting coverage and also the CTN series that we produce on that channel. Where to watch us online. So you don't live in Ann Arbor, maybe you don't have cable. It's not really, you can watch us anywhere in the world is what I like to say. We've got our live stream. So anything that's going out on the channel also goes on our website in our live stream. So we've also got video on demand. Who doesn't love video on demand? Watch at your leisure. So we've got a great website on our video on demand is on our website, as well as what I call our fifth channel, our YouTube channel. So all of our programming and meetings also go on our YouTube channel. So if folks don't have cable, they can watch it on YouTube or they can watch it on our website. So there's plenty of ways to watch CTN. And new, we are now on the streaming devices. So the Apple TV, the Amazon Fire, and the Roku. So you can find our channels that way through an app that's free. And you can watch our channels in high def on those streaming devices. So plenty of places to watch CTN. You don't have to have cable anymore, where it used to be the case where if you didn't have cable or you didn't live in the city, you couldn't watch CTN. So when it comes to our funding, we like to stress that we don't receive general fund revenue and we don't receive tax dollars for our funding for our budget. However, what it is, the CTN is funded from the local, or I'm sorry, we receive our funding from the cable providers, so Comcast, AT&T, and they give the money to the city of Ann Arbor, in which Ann Arbor gives it to CTN, to put it simply. So that's how we receive our funding. And we, their fees are capped at 5%, and we've also received 2% for the PEG fee that we also receive from the cable operators. So the cable operators are paying the city to use the rights of way to run their cables, and that's how we receive our funding. And we also have a state franchise. And I should mention that there is Comcast doesn't have any exclusivity. So if any other cable provider did want to come into Ann Arbor, they by all means have the ability to do so. So that's a little bit. So I wanted to show you in the next slide, we have if you're a Comcast cable subscriber, you receive your bill. And if you notice at the top or on the last page, usually under the taxes, surcharges, and fees, there's a franchise fee and a PEG fee. And those fees are what we receive our funding from. And as you probably know, a lot of folks over the years, past couple of years, they've been cutting the cord. So our budget has, we've seen a decrease over the last couple of years because people have gone to streaming devices, or they're using other means and they don't want cable anymore. So that does affect our budget when that does happen. CTN and when on the cable, so folks who can receive it are Ann Arbor, the city of Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti Township, portions of Scioto, and Pittsfield all receive CTN in their homes if they've got Comcast. People always ask us if, who watches their channels? How do you know how many people? So, unfortunately, we're not the big cable stations, so we don't have the Nielsen ratings. We don't do things like that. So a lot of it is word of mouth. And unfortunately, we can track things with Google Analytics. We can also track things through hits on our video on demand. We can track things obviously on YouTube with hits and whatnot. So those are different, and then those are just different ways that we find that people are watching our channels. we did reach out to Comcast. They don't really, they don't give us a number, but they gave us a broad number recently as far as the penetration for our channels into Ann Arbor. And they gave us a number of about 63,000 households in the commercial reach in the city. And that doesn't include the other cities and townships that I had mentioned. So we're out there for sure. But yeah, I don't have a definitive number for anyone if they want to know, how many people watch your channels. So it's a lot of times word of mouth. But again, PEG channels, we're not commercial, so we're not trying to make money off of that. There's no, commercial or anything like that. So we find that, you're just, the primary purpose is really community television, and we're not looking to find out that exact number, such as, the commercial stations may want, do want to know. So our staff is made up of 8 full-timers, and we've got producers, a programmer, and a trainer. And at any given time, it depends. The last 2 years have been kind of weird, but we have usually about 3 to 4 temps, production temps in our office, rotating it throughout the year. And right now we've got 1, so things have scaled back a little bit. And it's same with our internships. We also have a pretty extensive, at least we did at one time, had a pretty extensive internship program. But right now we don't have any, as we're not all in the office at this moment, but we're looking to start that back up very soon. So in a given year, CTN covers 19 boards and commissions and totaling about 200 meetings per year. So that's what our staff of 8 covers, as well as all of our programming and whatnot. And then you can view the meetings, like I had mentioned, on the live stream, video on demand, and the YouTube. So folks definitely have their options to view our meetings. We've also done, we have the special meetings that come up through the year as well. So the city will ask us to cover but meetings, topics for the police, solid waste. Oh, sorry about that. That's my dog. And of course, we cover the Board of Education meetings. So those are twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month. So yeah, we're meeting coverage is heavy, but we make, we do our best. So these are some of the CTN produced programs that we have. So these are shows that are kind of on the regular, and we all different topics. So we've got A2 Inclusive, which is covers the Commission on Disability Issues. We work with them to partner with topics. Access Ann Arbor, the 30-minute talk show where folks can come in and talk about an event, something they're promoting, a nonprofit. And we open up the studio and we do all the work on this show. And there's no behind the scenes for the public. They basically just control the content. Adventures in Parenthood, I co-host that. We talk about parenting, Ctn Sports. So we've covered all the Ann Arbor Public Schools sports. And when I say all, I don't mean all, I mean certain sports in the season that we cover. So we'll cover all of the sport, like for football, we'll cover the football for the season. We'll cover some different sports. FYI is our weekly news magazine show. So that's like our infotainment show, we like to call it. And there's interviews, event coverage. So that's a little bit of an Entertainment Tonight type show where there's different programs or different interviews in one show. And then we've got Green Room, Happy Tales, Let's Watch. We've got all these programs that we produce with our staff. And some of them it could be bi-weekly, they could be every other month, they could be monthly. It just depends on the show. And as well, we have other things that we cover throughout the year. So we have our annual Santa call-in show. So that's the last 2 years we did that virtual. So Santa kids got to call in and they got to Zoom with him. Candidate comments, again, part of the election coverage. League of Women Voters, Ann Arbor Public Schools, all of the high school commencements. We like to cover those. We've been covering those for years. Last year we did not due to staffing issue but we did play back all of the high school commencements for the Ann Arbor Public Schools. Art fair, oh my gosh, all about art fair. Yes, so we have a booth. We're down at the art fair. In the past, we've been there 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. The last 2 years we were not there. But we've got our tent, we're there, we have an open mic, people can come up. We have people from all over the world that have come on art fair, and then we've got a whole full week of programming to play. Usually it'll be like 6, 7 shows in a day. So it's so fun. People love our art fair coverage. Mayor's Green Fair, we're also there. So we had a tent there one year. Then we did another open mic so people can come up, ask them a question. Ann Arbor Rec and Ed, we do our media camps. We took a little break for the last 2 years, but they're back again. So we have 2 weeks of media camps that the kids can come into CTN this summer, and they can sign up and they'll learn all about TV production. And in the end, at the end of the week, they usually interview someone like the mayor or someone in studio, so they can see how an in-studio TV interview goes. And as well, we've also partnered with the Ann Arbor Public Schools with their community resource program, the CR program. So that's kind of like the kids will come in for their last class of their senior year, and they have to do something out in the community. And some of them will choose CTN because they want to, go into the industry. Most kids want to, are going into the industry. So they will choose CTN to be part of their CR program. As far as our studios and our facility, we've got our main studio. We've got a Hotline Studio. So that's kind of like our one-man band studio, but not. You can still have more than one person in there. We've got production equipment, which is so much. It's crazy the amount of equipment that we have to lend out to the public, as well as our staff uses. The GoPros, the DSLRs, we just got a drone. We're super excited about that. We've got green screens, portable green screens. This past 2 years, we got a lot of accessories for smartphones, because a lot of folks were doing things at home and needed the lighting or tripods. We've got microphones, and as well as our editing software. We train the public to learn on MacBooks. So they're learning Final Cut Pro and editing, and we've got motion compressor, and our staff also use the Avid software, if you're familiar with that. But we teach the public on Mac and Final Cut Pro. So residency. So this is a big one. So you want to come to CTN. So we have a couple of things that we like to check off, mostly residency. So we like to make sure, we have to make sure that either you're an Ann Arbor resident, or you, depending on what you want to do. So there's 2 facets. You want to turn in programming, or do you want to come take workshops and check out equipment? So those are the 2 facets of CTN with the public. Folks who want to turn in a program, you've just recorded something for a nonprofit, or you got this really cool video that you really want to play, and think the city of Ann Arbor would love it. Folks would like it in Ann Arbor. There's a form to fill out, but we need to make sure that you're a resident of the city of Ann Arbor. And if you're not, we ask that you find someone who's willing to sign off and sign the cablecast form, taking responsibility for that program. So that's a big thing with turning in programs to CTN. Got to make sure that if you're turning in something, you're going to be taking responsibility for what it is. Channel 17 is unique because that's the one channel that's your channel, the public channel, and we don't pre-screen or pre-censor. So anything you turn in, we're going to put on. If you sign the form and you're a resident, and we've got your address and information in our database. So if there's any calls or anything questionable in it, we're going to come to you as the producer. Now, if you don't live in the city, but you're affiliated with a nonprofit in Washtenaw, that's another way to use CTN in our services and take workshops or turn in programming or produce, a video on behalf of your nonprofit. So again, there's a couple different ways, but we try and do our best. That's part of our policy. So it's not something we've just decided, but it's been part of the policy that it's residents are able to use our services in that way. So our workshops that we offer, so remote workshops, producing and recording out in the field. Studio, we teach you all about how to produce a show in the studio, from the lighting, the cameras, the audio, floor managing, CG, teleprompter. We've got all of that. So we'll teach you how basically the studio usually, about 6 weeks, once a week. We've also got a Hotline Studio, which is our smaller studio, like I mentioned. So that's one that you come in You could sit down just like I am, and with our cameras, and they're remote controlled, and you could produce a show on your own. I mean, you're the director, you've got the cameras, so you don't need any other production staff with you. You could do the show completely in there by yourself, or you could be the director and have a talent over on the other side of the studio. And I wish I could show you. The picture below is the Hotline Studio. They're doing a class in that photo, but basically you sit there, you control it remotely, and then the guests can be over on the other side. And as well, we are outfitting that, and it's almost ready as a podcast studio. So someone could also come in and do a podcast, either audio or audio and video, depending on what you want. And then we also teach editing. So like I said, Final Cut Pro, the basics, the concepts, the techniques, and we've got the latest and greatest software version. And we've got MacBooks, and then we've also got Macs in our editing suites at CTN. So if you don't want to take one home, you can come to CTN and edit in our edit suites. And as well, we also have an audio booth. I didn't put that on there. We have an audio booth. So if there's something you need to record on audio, you know, some track, you've done something at home, but you need to use the audio booth to use our audio room, then we've got that as well. So lots of stuff. So real quick, just regarding the community producer responsibilities, if you do and would like to be a community producer, again, you are the owner of the content. We ask that there's no underwriting. So like I said, we're not commercial. So we're asking that you don't, ask pretty much any call to action. So we don't want to talk about sales. We don't want to talk about coming down to see the latest and greatest, anything at the bake shop, and you can get, 10% off if you mention you saw this on CTN, nothing like that. But you can underwrite as far as if you produced a show or turned something in and a business or something donated or did something, for something on the show, a good or a service, then you can give them credit. Absolutely. Like I said, we don't pre-screen or pre-censor, and we do have policy and procedures that we do ask the community producers become familiar with. Those are on our website. You can look at, there's 2 Google Docs as far as the policies and procedures. So yeah, like I mentioned, submitting your shows to channel 17, our public channel, any resident can. So if you have something you think would be, that the community would love to see or have interest in, or you don't even care, you just want to get more, you want to be on TV. Channel 17 is the place to do it. And we've got application for presentation. Again, that's on our website, but I would also, send you the link to fill it out. It's all fillable online. And we'd ask, to get your contact info, and it's really not that difficult. So there's also options if you want to produce something maybe monthly, or you've got something you want to do weekly if you're getting crazy. We have time slots, so that's kind of cool. I know a lot of our producers love having their programming, on at 9 a.m. on Sunday. Maybe it's a religious program or something like that, or a comedy show or something, maybe a little more questionable content. You can put that on in the evening. So maybe you want 11 o'clock on Saturdays, every Saturday. So those options are there to pick time slots. And that's something you would go over with our programmer, Craig Carras, who has been at CTN over, I think, 25 years. And I had mentioned our EBB, our electronic bulletin board. Again, for announcements and updates we promote local events, PSAs, generally for nonprofit purposes. So if you've got a garage sale, I'm probably not going to put up a garage sale notice. We don't really use it for the purposes. If you've got logos, photos, something for an event that you want to send, I ask that you can submit it online. We've got a form that you can do it, or you can just email it to me and attach any type of media or logos to the email. Yeah, like I mentioned, infographics and logos, they are encouraged, but I can certainly make something. And a lot of what you'll see on channel 19, if you go on our website, you'll see the different things that either people have submitted or that I've created. So as far as contacting, we can't even see, my email, Jamie's email, she's a multimedia instructor. Craig is like I mentioned, our programmer. So that's our contact info. If you have any questions about taking a preview. We call it, it's an orientation, but we call it the preview. This is basically what it is. It's kind of what I would do with folks who are interested. And then I should also mention, if you're interested in workshops and you have some background, you could test out, well, meaning you don't have to go through the weeks of our workshops in remote and editing. If you've already got experience and you're just looking for the equipment, or maybe you just need a microphone, or you want to check out the DSLR and take some photos for something. Again, we can test out on certain things. So you don't have to go through weeks of programming, weeks of workshops if you've already got the experience, or you can if you want to learn more, sure. So Jamie and I are talking right now, and we're trying to come up with if we're going to make these in person or virtual. So Jamie's new at CTN, so she's just getting into the thick of things as far as our workshops go, because we've been on hold because we didn't have a person in place to have the workshops for almost 1.5 years. So we're just now all getting back in on it, and hopefully they're most likely going to be in person, but we can certainly have the option of virtual. And then again, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and our hashtag is CTN Ann Arbor. And we also have a listserv, a public access listserv, and then I've got another listserv for folks who are interested just in CTN in general. And so we've got two. I don't have that on here. If you're interested, by all means, I could certainly sign anyone up, or you can find it on our website. If you click on our homepage, you'll see under all of the social media icons where to sign up for a Gov delivery. So yeah, that's a little bit about CTN. We're not being able to show you our studio, and I'd be pointing to this and that and talking about that, but hopefully this works. I know we're in strange times, but we're getting back there. So hopefully, we would love to meet people in person. That's what we do. We find that our producers and folks who come to CTN usually they stick around. So we see them for years, whether it's a hobby or something they're learning for a class or school, or folks just, always wanted to get into television production or media production and just never did. Or so we get folks from 14 all the way to well into retirement and everything in between. I would say our clients are. So yeah, that's a little bit about CTN.
Melissa, there's a couple questions in the Q&A box for you.
Oh, okay. Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, CTN was forced by the pandemic to do a lot of retooling and training for Zoom meetings, webinars. Yeah, was that all funded internally, or did City Council help? No, that was, everything that we did in regards to how we managed the meetings, scheduled playback, everything we did was working with the different departments, but I would say CTN pretty much had the bulk of it. Funded, yeah, no, it wasn't funded by anything other than, what our budget is. We didn't do anything or reach out anywhere externally for that. May non-residents NPO employees take workshops? Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, so if you're part of a nonprofit and you're not in Washington or Ann Arbor, but you're nonprofit or your messaging or what you offer. So say you're in Farmington Hills, but you have a service that would be of, someone in Ann Arbor may, have interest or could benefit from it, or would be interested, then yes, you could take workshops. What we do as far as nonprofits is we do require a letter. I have a template, and I do ask that all of the nonprofits have a state, so-and-so, they list their names, who has permission to represent the nonprofit on their behalf. And we keep that on file for 1 year. Thanks. Okay, someone very informative. Okay, good. I know I'm a little nervous. This is my first time doing this. Usually I'm in person. Can you tell us what you think is the important part of CTN and what you like best about working there? Oh my gosh. So I would say what I like best about CTN is my day's not the same every day, and especially now that I'm home almost 70% of the time. So I do a lot of, as a community relations, I don't necessarily have to be at the office at the moment, but I would say when it was definitely the amount of people I've met over the years, in the 20 years, but in the last 10 years has been awesome. It's just getting to know people and helping them kind of bring their messaging to the screen or what their vision is and making that happen for them is pretty rewarding in that regard. So when someone says, "Oh, you like your job?" So I do, because I like working with people. So I enjoy it, and I like meeting people, and I love the relationships that you can build, and on that professional level, and helping people. And I think between working with the schools and working with anyone thereafter, it's been awesome. So I think CTN, the most important part is that we're so unique, because no one can just be on TV, right? So you can't just, hey, I want to be on TV, but you can in this regard. So when I worked for Novi, Farmington Hills, and Farmington for 10 years, that was great too. We were a part of a consortium. So those 3 cities, we had one building in all 3 cities. We met folks from all 3 of the municipalities, and it was in the communities, and it was really cool just being able to just see people's visions and helping them make it happen. Has the increased popularity of TikTok and homemade video content by younger people over the past 5 years translated to increased interest in younger age groups? Any targeted awareness for resources available for middle and high schools, or there are age restrictions? So I would say, I want to say yes, it has, because it's just been weird, the last 2 years. But I know the first year in 2020, after the shutdown, we reached out to anyone and everyone, because I was on YouTube a lot. And so I would see people, putting out these videos, whether it was the teachers or the schools or people I knew putting out these videos, because they had time on their hands, and it's kind of fun and it's easy. Everyone's got their smartphones, and it's so easy with these social media devices. So I would say a lot of the kids who come in, and but the high schoolers that come in, who are coming in and take, part of the CR, and then also the ones that have done the camps over the last 5 years, they're interested. Oh, they come in and they definitely know social media. So I do feel like video production is skyrocketed as far as the younger age group. So yes, in that regard, most definitely. And with the YouTubers and the vloggers, and myself, I like to do stuff on Instagram Live and things like that. Again, I have I do this with background, but it's interesting to see the folks who didn't have a background doing this kind of stuff. But now you find how there's such amazing talent out there, and YouTube and TikTok, Instagram have allowed that to put a spotlight on it for sure. Any targeted awareness for resources available for middle and high schoolers, or their age restrictions? So in order to use our studios and our equipment, I believe it is 14 and 14, I think 14, 15, you have to have parental, like if you're gonna take our workshops, then your parent has to be present. So most of the kids that we see as far as our workshops and have interest are 15 and older, because they no longer have to have the parent there. But now I kind of feel like you got to wonder, I mean, throughout the pandemic, our studios were closed to the public. However, we had curbside checkout of equipment the whole time. And I found that it wasn't what we thought, as far as, checking out equipment every week after week. It wasn't like that. And we found that a lot of folks were purchasing their own. So they're purchasing their own equipment, and they're using their own, smartphones and their own iPads and certain devices and lights. They were purchasing their own stuff and doing it. So they didn't see that need, I think, to borrow ours. I mean, our green screen in our studio was used pretty often. between our staff and the public. However, and we thought, oh my gosh, the public can't use our green screen anymore. Let's purchase a portable one. So we purchased three different sizes, and not once did any of the three get checked out. And I think a lot of that comes too because, you know, who just knows how to use a green screen, right? But we were definitely willing to give a, you know, obviously, you know, walk people through, and whether it was on Zoom or in person, we were going to make it happen. But I think a lot of folks come to CTN because they know that that help is there. So if you get stuck, I mean, I'm one of them, right? If I get stuck when I'm editing and I'm frustrated, I just, you know, scream to my staff, one of my staff, and help me. So it's kind of like people liked, they like our, they just like the help, right? You want help when you're learning something new. You don't want to just do it on your own. Some people do, but a lot of times people would come to CTN because they knew that they could get the assistance or help if they got stuck. So I don't know if that's part of the question or not, but yeah, I'm kind of going off, just kind of thinking, but yeah.
All right, Melissa, that looks like it's it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Thank you so much. Melissa is also our resource for getting these recordings out to y'all, as well as really anybody. They're on YouTube, they're on our resources page. Melissa does this for us. So big thank you to helping us out this year on all of that. And
For sure.
Yeah. All righty, y'all. That looks like it's going to be it for tonight. Next week on the 23rd is going to be the city clerk's office. That's my department. So I will see everyone next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Melissa. Bye, everyone. Thank you.